Snake was right. Yeah.
So this is a part of Mark Reed's stream from last night. Only my part, of course. Anyway, I feel like I kind of dropped the ball on my exiting comments because I just have a lot to say about it. So I thought I would improve my thoughts up front here and maybe continue and clarify the conversation and my position, and it can serve as a good intro to the video as a whole. The question of Mark's stream was, why are people voting for a convicted felon? Of course, referring to Donald J. Trump. To which I asked, why does it matter whether they're convicted or not? The Trump voters think that the so-called swamp is full of people who should be convicted but aren't, and that Trump was unrightfully convicted. So the actual status of the conviction doesn't matter, especially if the guilty don't get charged, if people are getting away with it. So what matters is like the actual ontological status of the guilt, not whether the legal system recognizes it. So the Trump voters think he was wrongfully convicted, and they may have a point there. I think he's certainly guilty of other stuff like war crimes, just as every president in the modern era is. But they'll never be accountable for that, because then you'd set a precedent that they'd all be accountable for. Which leads me to Joe Biden. So Leo Phileas and Grayson from Base Theory stopped by. They both accused Joe Biden of actual genocide, referring to Gaza, and yet they gleefully support him and are going to vote for him. So not that Trump is any better on the Israel situation, but they'll vote for a guy who they think is guilty of genocide, but they're confused as to why people would vote for a guy who they think was wrongfully convicted. Seems odd to me. I wish I had that thought last night, so I wanted to add that specifically. Maybe I'll pose that to them soon here. But continuing on, voters aren't supporting Trump because they're just evil. They're doing it because he convinced them that he's the outsider. Like this is why Trump has this special spice, special sauce. He frames himself as the outsider who's going to take on this swamp. No one else is really even talking about it. They'll blame the swamp on the other party, but Trump is kind of against a majority of his own party a lot of the time. So he has this air about him that he's the outsider. It's like he's talking about the whole system, not just the Democrats. It's so like talking about it as it's everyone is kind of that thing that no one wants to talk about, but everyone knows. All the voters know this. At least your average person. People love this because Democrats try to act holier than thou when they're just as corrupt, murderous, duplicitous, and even admitted by their own voters, genocidal. So, yet some people on the right definitely want to yeet queer people completely out of existence. All right, no question, they're scumbags. Okay, but I mean, Trump was the first president in history to ever go into office supporting gay marriage openly. And he got cheers for this at the RNC. That should count for something, right? I'm not like trying to sell Trump to you, but this is just a fact. Point being, because others in his camp just clearly are not all hostile to LGBT. So, I mean, they're like that part of his contingent is just kind of wanting anyone who will stand up to the politicians, who act like they're innocent, selfless saints, but are really just corrupt demons. So Trump's not politically correct. They see him as not tied down by some corporation's agenda, just his own. And now this instinct is technically correct. However, Trump is not smart or educated enough to actually tackle corruption. He just is bombastic. He's just a middle finger, nothing deeper. He's also just as unscrupulous as, but at least disrespectful to the system that's failing us. So in light of that, like, why would someone care if he filed some paperwork wrong to do some hush money, which itself is legal? Why would that change anything about his momentum and his movement? There's also that element that the charges are actually insane, at least the way it's been going about. So the jury were instructed they don't even have to agree that a crime, they don't have to agree what crime was committed, which is kind of the same thing. They don't have to agree that a crime was committed. Technically they do, but that the fact that they don't have to agree what it was, it's like semantically they don't have to agree that any single crime was committed. They're just supposed to assume a crime, literally any crime. Trump wasn't charged with this crime. They were told that the fraudulent paperwork was to cover up a crime, but then told the crime could be anything, any felony. So he wasn't charged with that, the thing that the case hinges on, whatever myriad thing the jury were told that they were allowed to assume it was. They're just told to assume some crime happened and take your pick. And therefore, by default, any filing any of this payment, no matter what it was, automatically becomes wrongly reported if you start with the premise that there was a crime being covered up. But that wasn't the thing that was actually on trial. So he couldn't have filed them as campaign expenses. He couldn't have filed them as anything. No matter what happened, as long as you have that first premise, you have the thing that the trial's actually about. So, like, he's being tried on something that he's not being tried on, if that makes sense. He was charged for falsifying records to cover a crime, but not charged with that crime. They didn't even have to decide what the crime was. It's actually insane. Just imagine that you're charged with crime. Literally just crime, plain crime, and the jury's instructed, it doesn't matter, just pick a crime, any crime, as long as you think he did it. If you think he murdered someone, if the other half of the jury thinks that you stole a car, and another person thinks that you did identity theft, as long as you all agree that some crime happened, pick a crime, any crime, then you're guilty of vague crime. Imagine if that was the charge, just crime. And, but Trump's trial was even worse than this. It was basically like tampering with evidence of the assumed crime. So it's even more convoluted. So he wasn't even charged with the vague crime. He was charged with the cover-up. But they didn't have to really establish, in any legal sense, the crime, the felony that he was trying to cover up. So the charges hinged on an event that the trial wasn't even actually about. And why is this? Because the FEC declined to charge him with any federal crimes, which are the crimes that he was supposedly covered up. He wasn't charged or convicted of that. But the New York State court just assumed they'd occurred anyway, and the corrupt Judge Mershon didn't even allow the defense to bring in testimony from an FEC chairman as to why Trump didn't break any FEC laws. They didn't allow the person whose job it is to determine whether the specific law was broken, to testify in a trial where this was the most important element, but they didn't even have to prove it or agree that it happened. Like, just actually insane. So that's why people don't care about this conviction. We kind of touched on this. I was hoping to talk more about this, but I guess the conversation didn't go in that direction much.
Get on with it!
But, so, why would someone vote for a convicted criminal? Because people on both sides will excuse the most egregious acts on their side just to stop the other side. Which just makes both sides lower their standards. That was kind of the focus of the discussion. That last part of the sentence. I also got accused by numerous people in the chat of lying about Joe Biden threatening Ukraine aid unless they fired the prosecutor looking at the company his son was laundering money through. I'll address that in another video. Other than that, this was a very enjoyable and interesting conversation, so enjoy.
In Latin America, you see that, for example, when you elect a mayor of a specific province, you elect the municipal representation who's sitting there. Those people will have usually a 4-year period. So every 4 years, you have to elect who's going to be your local representatives. And usually what is being done is that you have the presidential election and the congressional election of the whole country. And then 2 years after that, you have the election for the regional municipal representatives. In the United States, it's very similar in that sense because there's a separation, but each state functions in its own way. It's a disorder in that sense. So in the United States, what's interesting is that the famous phrase, oh, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. It's BS. They're a democracy. And one of the evidences is that their elections within the states is a direct voting. However, that direct voting is conditioned to the representatives that are placed there by the bipartisan system. So the problem is, in that sense. But
a republic is still a democracy, and that's what I don't understand that people don't get. Like, there's various different democratic systems. Technically, I live in a constitutional monarchy, right? So it's basically that we have a monarch, but the monarch holds no real power. It's still a democracy. We still vote for our leaders. It's just that, it's still a democracy, just like a republic's a democracy. But I want to welcome Taylor. How you doing, Snake? How you been? I haven't seen you for ages, mate. I've absolutely missed you. Really. It's great to see you again.
Trying to get back in there,
Yeah, I know what it's like. Yeah, it's rough.
Sometimes I'll just disappear for a couple months, but
okay. Well, I really miss your debate show. I got to say, I've sort of I haven't been able to get a lot of debates recently, so I've just decided to start doing debates on my own channel. Like I'm gonna make my own with blackjack and hookers kind of thing.
Yeah,
So yeah, if I can hit you up for debates, I'd really love it, mate. But I got to get on her because I kind of do the organization for that too. So okay, well,
I'm trying to hold me to it. If someone lights a fire under my butt, I'm more likely to do stuff. But I'm trying to get back into YouTube more regularly. So.
Well, I'd love to collab with you at some point and maybe have you on for an interview and stuff like that. Like, just see if we can, collab on something, because I've really enjoyed working with you in the past. So I really.
Yeah, I'm always around. I just, there's always something comes up, and you know.
And I know you've been working really hard, and I totally understand that. But it's great to see you. Honestly, I really have missed you.
And thank you for reaching out those couple times. Yeah.
Oh, no problem. I do it a lot, actually. If I just haven't seen someone around for a while, I just want to make sure,
Oh, so I'm not special?
No, not in the slightest. I'm sorry. But you are kind of special because I know that you're from the United States of America. And
I am.
I need somebody to explain to me how someone gets convicted of a felony and loses no support whatsoever.
Well, it's not really the kind of thing that would change someone's mind who is already on the Trump train, because it's relatively minor, just as is.
It,
And
it's
most of them
relatively
don't.
minor.
Yeah, just fudging some numbers in a book so you don't look like you're sleeping with porn stars. It's
But I mean, it's
as far as
falsification
immoral
of
things,
business records.
it's really not. I mean, politicians have been caught cheating on their wives, and they still have careers. Some of them lose their careers. Some of them continue to have careers. So it's not really a huge deal to people. Most of the Trump supporters don't even believe this conviction was legitimate at all. Some of them because they're in the cult of personality, and like he said, he could shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue and they would still support him.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the majority of the people. I think that they see this as a political persecution and a pretty minor crime, if anything.
Mhm.
And if
I
this is what like pushes someone over the line, like, oh, I can't vote for him anymore, it's like this pales in comparison to lots of other stuff that you could complain about Trump with. So
Yeah, I don't think that any crime for the leader of a country is minor. I think that if you are electing someone to lead the country, if they can't obey the laws, there's no reason why they're going to obey the law while they're in there. Like I don't understand why even sort of minor transgressions should be overlooked in somebody that represents your country.
well, I will add too that the Trump movement is kind of built around this idea that the people who have been in power are already all criminals who are just not being held accountable, and they are already breaking laws, finance laws, campaign laws, war crimes, this whole deep state idea. They believe the whole system is criminal.
And
And they're not always wrong.
I get that sort of prevailing attitude. I do understand that prevailing attitude that the system allows people to find loopholes around these crimes, kind of thing. It's very difficult though, because I don't know if Biden has committed crimes or not. Like not. I think that if he has, he should be held accountable for them. But nothing that I've seen says that to be the case.
I would say probably he has. I mean, as far as war crimes, every president is guilty of that. And as far as like, I think the whole Ukraine corruption thing, I think that was probably criminal. Personally, that's my view of Biden. Not that I'm on the Trump train or anything like that, but and the fact that every president and like member of Senate are all multi-millionaires, but their actual salary is like, I don't even know. It's probably not, doesn't even break 100K, I don't think, at least.
So let me give a quick example to give a more broader perspective. I'm sorry. The person below me, I did not catch your name. How should I address you? Huh?
Snake.
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 That's what I go
okay.
by. Yeah.
All right, perfect. I just wanted to address you correctly and respectfully. Okay, as Snake was saying, but also Mark, I want to give this a little boost. Everybody knows here who Hugo Chavez was,
Vaguely.
Yeah.
Hugo
He's
Chavez.
communist leader.
So
As a Venezuela.
Venezuela. So let me give you this perspective. Hugo Chavez committed 2 actions of attempted coups against Carlos Andres Perez, who was the president in the mid 90s in Venezuela. After the biggest protests in Venezuela, the Caracazo, on the 90s. I was there in Caracas on his 2nd attempt. So I lived through an attempted coup, a political coup to overthrow the government. He failed, he got arrested, he was sent to jail. He was then pardoned by the next president, who was Caldera. And as soon as he was pardoned, that's when his political life blew up. And suddenly he got elected in 98 and became president in 99. And, well, the rest is history. So when Mark asks, how is it that people will support a criminal, a convicted criminal like Donald Trump, that is the how is easily responded by, because people will follow the cult of personality when they don't have a solid political base to understand political reality and political routes, etc. Just like Venezuela had no political culture, no political maturity, and voted Chavez into power, and we have what we have today. So the problem resides in something that Snake said very well. One of the problems resides, and it's people believe so much grade of bullshit, like the ideas of deep state, or allow themselves to be guided by charlatans like Alex Jones, for example, that then at the hour of the truth, they become the worst enemies of what they're trying to, or they assume they're defending. I don't know if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it matters whether he's convicted or not? Because what if the charge is overturned? Does that change anything, in your opinion?
What, like the appeals and it succeeded?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
I don't. Possibly. I mean, I don't think so, because it's more that, as I said earlier, he hasn't sort of argued that he falsified business records. His question has been why he falsified business records. That was his entire defense, is that he falsified them to stop his wife from finding out. I don't understand why that would.
I mean, you might have read more than I have, but like I've been reading articles about it. It says that he did argue that the records were accurate. Obviously, he's lying to his wife, but the argument was that it is accurate to say that they're legal expenses. I don't know.
In very short and concise way. Oh, sorry, Robin wants to speak.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
can
sorry,
you hear me?
welcome, Robin.
Because
I do
my
apologize.
microphone is not very good in this phone.
We can hear you.
Okay, I just want to say first, the reason why that you can run as a felon is because our fathers never imagined in their wildest dreams.
Robin, your microphone is
Okay.
breaking up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, your mic's really
Yeah,
breaking up.
it's
I'm
hard.
I'll
going
give you
to
a
get off
second
here.
to-
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's all right. Look, get back to us when you've got a better connection. You're probably out on the road right now. Robin does do driving, so but we'll leave for a bit. See if you can find a maybe better signal or something. It's probably the signal if you are out and about, Robin. I do apologize. I just quickly looking through. Is the Ukraine thing? Yeah, the Ukraine thing was Burisma, wasn't it?
Yeah, so his son was on the board of Burisma, even though he was like a crackhead and had no qualifications. So like already it's like, we know politicians do this. We know they funnel money through these weird schemes. His son is on the board of
Nepotism,
Burisma. It's getting investigated. Joe Biden as vice president comes out and threatens to withhold Ukraine's funding unless they fire the prosecutor who's investigating Burisma, and they drop it, and so it's pretty fishy.
Yeah, but
That's
I
the
think
short of it.
pretty. No, I get what you're saying, and it concerns me that it's pretty fishy. But you're talking about pretty fishy as opposed to sort of an actual crime going down. I don't. I see it as pretty fishy. How much of that was sort of Hunter Biden not reporting taxes and things is
Yeah.
unclear.
Well,
I get
then
that.
there's sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, or if you're
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead.
so there was the evidence discovered on the laptop, which the FBI tried to suppress and used private companies to suppress the news story of during the election. But the laptop had information on it. The former business partner came forward and said that they were using Hunter Biden as a proxy. There are text messages saying, "We'll withhold this money for the big man," the business partner. I think his name is Bob Alinsky, something like that. Said, yeah, that's code for Joe Biden. So there's corroborating evidence. There's a lot surrounding that. I'm not even like fully into all the stuff that's on the laptop.
The strange thing is this seems familiar to me, and the reason why, and I'm just looking it up now, is that the United States, like the intelligence community, it released sort of proxies of Russian intelligence, promoted and lauded misleading or unsubstantiated narratives about the Bidens to US media organizations. Like all of this kind of, he pressured the Ukraine into removing the prosecutor, is actually misinformation or disinformation that has been out there intentionally.
He's on tape saying it.
What's interesting in this sense,
saying what?
He said if you don't fire the prosecutor, he's bragging about it on tape. I mean, I can try and find it, but
go for it.
He actually says it himself. But I guess why I was kind of bringing up does it matter whether they're convicted or not, is there's this perception that there's a class of people who are being convicted, or who aren't being convicted for things that they should be convicted for. Like technically Bill Clinton committed perjury when he said he did not have sex with Monica Lewinsky. They didn't charge him.
And he was
perjury.
impeached for that.
Yeah,
he was impeached.
But he wasn't charged.
Oh, I think he should be charged. Absolutely. Yeah. I think he should be charged with perjury. I think that, but see, that's sort of what we call, that is a tu quoque, right? It's sort of saying, hey, these.
Well, no, the point is like he got let go and he's not convicted, so I guess he's not.
If we could,
and like Hillary Clinton, they said she did break the law with her emails, but they're not going to charge her for it. They're not going to recommend charges. So there's this revenge fantasy they have. They feel that there's a double standard. They want the strong man because they want someone to stand up and say fuck you. It's kind of this complicated mixture.
And what's funny on this, and I do have to mention it, the position of the MAGA to point the finger in regards of potential criminal activity by the Democrats, whoever it is actually a double standard, because if we go back into history, why didn't they process Nixon? Why let them go and live the rest of disgrace to the Republican Party? But at the end, he had done one of the major acts of corruption that is a big no-no in democracy. But give you an example, Mark Reed. Look at Lula da Silva in Brazil. He was sentenced for the Lava Jato case, the corruption probes of the Lava Jato, or in translation, Lava Jato means car wash probe. And he was sentenced. He was sent to jail. And then his sentence was reverted. And who's president of Brazil today? Lula da Silva. This tells you that in many circumstances, when the cult of personality becomes so strong, a process like this means absolutely nothing towards the caudillo, towards the populist, the demagogue like Trump, or like Chavez, or like Ortega, or like Lula da Silva. It well, Bolsonaro also. I mean, Bolsonaro is being tried right now for treason against his own country, and who we call the mini Trump. It still has and holds a lot of political power. So again, um, just to really drive the point, the demagogue, the populist, the dictator wannabe, those type of figures, no matter what they do, will always obtain that necessary support because, in very short and concise way, because the people that follow them are politically immature or politically afraid or are guided by prejudice in most of the circumstances.
So
I want to welcome, just quickly before you
Yeah.
start, I just want to welcome Leo to the panel. It's good to see you, Leo. But yeah, I'm more than happy to hear what you've got to say, Snake Soren.
Oh, if Leo's ready, I don't want to.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So whether Trump is legitimate or not, in this sentiment, he's picking up on this sentiment that people are angry at politicians who've been getting away with a lot of crap and a lot of corruption, and not that he's actually exempt from any of that corruption, but people are really angry about that, and he's using that as his message, and he's making himself the avatar of that.
Tapping
So
into
it's not necessarily that like they want some kind of dictator. It's kind of like that they feel like they're already being bullied by dictators who are already in power. And it is ironic because it's all the same. Like they're
What do you
not
mean,
gonna
all
they're
the
not
same?
Trump's not going to drain the swamp. He already had a chance, he didn't do
Well,
it.
no, of course not.
But there's this this sense of unfairness that has just been bubbling up and bubbling up, and they think Trump's the solution. And it's I don't think it's that they just want a dictator in power. I think that they feel that he is the he's going to take the other dictators out of power. Not that that's accurate, but that seems to be the sentiment behind it.
Well,
I would
get
agree
that,
with a
but
lot of that.
he's been in once already, and you had things like a former oil executive being put in charge of the EPA and a person that runs charter schools being put in charge of education. I mean, to sort of say that he had a chance to drain the swamp, and it was worse than
Just
ever.
got packed.
And for decades, the people who
Right.
vote for wars retire to the board of Lockheed Martin. So it's like it's kind of like,
The revolving door.
yeah.
Yeah.
I just have one question for everybody. Why do you think the system runs this way? Like what do you think might be a potential cause of the reason why our systems operate the way that they do? With
I know your
revolving doors
answer.
between big corporations and everything like that.
Yeah, I think it's because of the underlying problem with capitalism that you can leverage capital into power, and power can be leveraged into capital, and becomes a cyclical system of people using power to change the system to make to make them money, and then it is that money that then you use to leverage more power.
I disagree.
You disagree?
Obviously, the incentive is money and power. I think the incentive structure of the political system is all off. The fact that all they need to do is the only skill a politician needs is to be able to get elected. They don't have to do anything else. Case
You're
in
right.
point, Trump. He just has to say what they want, and they'll
he
love
gets
him
elected.
for it.
Yep.
So I don't think the fact that people want money is the problem. The problem is that the people in power have the options to use their power to get money, and it's basically regulations. Whether it's the incentives are off. Ranked choice voting, I think, is a huge factor in this, because, like you were saying, is it Ditso? Can I call you Ditso?
Yeah.
The two-party system has a stranglehold, so it's basically they have vote for me because I'm not the other guy, and that's
So
basically our election system.
You're pro RCV, just really quickly.
What's RCD?
RCV, ranked choice voting.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Fucking
So,
hell yeah.
let me
yeah.
answer
That's a
that.
big part of
Leo.
the problem. I think that term limits are a huge problem, especially with Congress. There's also just this lack of, we need some really good conflict of interest legislation and probably campaign funding
Finance
reforms.
Yep.
Finance reforms. I could go on, but
Everything you're saying is spot on, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I do agree with Mark that I think that the problem that underlies it all, that really is the root of this nasty ass growth that we have corrupting our beautiful earth, is capitalism. And I don't want to go off on this for too long, but I do want to say this. I think the problem isn't that people are doing this purposefully to be evil and greedy and everything like that. I think it's just the way that the systems operate today. That's it. It's a factor of the way that human political economy has slowly developed into the modern age. But one thing I think is absolutely true is that capitalism is showing its age. It was a product of the Industrial Revolution. We're now deep within the technological revolution, and I think that capitalism is starting to show its age. I think it's starting to show that it's a product of a different time in human society, and that at some point, whether we like it or not, we're going to have to look for something different, a better way to organize political economy and the way that humans broadly manage ourselves as a species, or we won't make it.
I don't think that's necessarily the case. I actually disagree with that. I think that capitalism can be redeemed, essentially, that capitalism can be saved, that with enough application of strict guidelines and legislature, we can because any system is going to have the same problems. The problem doesn't seem to be the system; it seems to be the people in it. That seems to be the problem.
That I fundamentally disagree with.
So let me, I want to kick into this real quickly before we go into depth on this conversation. I want to answer the question of Leo, and I want to answer it in the following way. Western Hemisphere. I don't want to involve right now Europe, Africa, or Asia. Just us, Western Hemisphere, from Argentina to Canada and the Caribbean. Why the systems have had these problems in the last 200 to 248 years. And why United States has played a major role in those problems.
Major role?
Yes. First, there's no doubt that once the Western Hemisphere, in the era of independence that lasted from 11,776 or 1776 up to 1974 or 11,974, that period where the majority of our countries became independent, the majority of our countries kicked the ass of the Spaniards, the British, the French, the German, everyone of Europe who had a hold here was pretty much done for. Ran out of the continent, and then we saw the establishment of constitutional democracies. I'm going to give you an example. From the beginning of last century to now, in the last 25 years, Latin America has had 190 constitutions. That means 10 constitutions per country. that means that countries like Mexico or Argentina or my own country, Costa Rica, we've had several forms of constitution where every time there were tweaks and improvements of how our democracies, how the division of powers, how the separation of church and state, how civil rights were applied, etc. United States has only had in 248 years 27 amendments, and actually it's 26 if we take into account that the 18th Amendment was deposed by the 19th, so the 18th Amendment is dead in that sense. In second grade, we talk about capitalism, we talk about communism, etc. Look, you know why my countries are called third world countries? Because at the end of the war and the beginning of the Cold War, many of my countries said to United States and to USSR, go fuck yourselves. We don't give a shit about your stupidity. We don't give a shit about capitalism or communism. We want to do our things our own way. If we see things in communism that works for us, we'll apply it. If we see things in capitalism that may work for us, we'll apply it. And that's why we got the label of third world countries, because we told the two powers of the world, go fuck yourselves, go fuck your history, go fuck your leaders. We want to be free.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think no. I think it was more to do with the political blocks at the time. I don't like, and I get what you're saying. They didn't fall into the first world, which was considered democracy in the West, or the second world, which was sort of the Russia and all of those sort of the Eastern Bloc, and it was sort of in the third world. At the moment, we kind of do categorize it as developing countries and developed countries. We do it around infrastructure and technology rather than sort of political ideology. So I'm not sure sort of the relevance of that.
So
that is kind of how it started, though.
Yeah. So for us, that notion of development or underdeveloped is also extremely criticized. But the point being there is that, for example, if the criteria was that we did not fall in democracy, the majority of Latin American countries were democratic and still are in many senses democratic, constitutional democratic. So that first criteria was completely nullified in that sense. But the point being here is that today we see the failures of not only capitalism, but we also see the failures of not protecting the basis institutions of that idea that originated here in the Western Hemisphere of modern democracy. The idea of we will not be governed by any church, by any individual, or by any monarch. That was the essential of it. In fact, there's a very interesting analysis from Latin America that it is in Spanish. I'm putting the name of it here. It's a discussion that was happening between Simón Bolívar and none other than Sebastián de Goyeneche. The discussion was, at the moment, several countries were becoming independent. The question was, should we continue the idea of constitutional monarchies or liberal constitutions? And Simón Bolívar kicked ass because he said, I will not be governed by any king. I will not be governed by any god. I will not be governed by any man. Freedom is...
In fairness, constitutional monarchies aren't really governed by... I mean, I get that you know, even to have a figurehead is kind of problematic, but in practice, like Canada... The Queen or King or whoever doesn't have any say in Canada, really.
I get that, but that's, I mean,
Canada
there's a reason,
like
but
full-on constitutional monarchy.
Yeah, but there's a reason Barbados left the Commonwealth just recently, and Jamaica is planning to build it, and there's building pressure that even Canada will not be able to resist that pressure, or even your country, Australia, that the Commonwealth is dying. It will die eventually because the countries are leaving it. Barbados was the first, but there's going to be a process. But what I was trying to
All
get
liberal
to,
democracies will die in favor of socialist republics.
I do disagree with you in that sense. I think that
Um,
that social
I
democracy and the combination of liberal
Not
uh,
not social
tendencies.
democracy, socialist republics.
well, republic is a form of democracy.
I
It's a form
understand
of
that. I'm not
democracy.
saying that they're
Yeah,
not. I'm just saying
I
that social democracy has its own definition. That's what I'm sort of
so
getting at. Is that I mean
how are you
something different.
distinguishing? How are you sort of subcategorizing republic in this sense? Because
What the word republic means.
What does it mean?
okay,
What is the, but I think
usually-
republics are forms of democracies in which you have representational,
correct.
like representational bodies
So in the
that are
most
voted
basic,
in by the citizens.
so the most basic etymological meaning of republic is a word that is two words: res, from the Latin thing or
Mhm.
cosa, and publica, which means public, self-explanatory. So the public thing,
Public affair,
we,
yes.
or the public affair, you can translate it, but in very, very strict etymological translation, res would be translated to cosa or thing in English. That's an issue of mistranslation towards English of the Latin word, which is much more easier translated to Spanish, French, Portuguese, etc. So the concept of the public thing is the republic in itself is not a system, but it's a sorry, I'm translating right now. It's a relation between the parts of that nation, of the people that are within that imaginary border thing and its eternal organization. Democracy, as the notion of demoskratia, the rule of the people, translated to English, but demos and kratia means group and means the idea of group in the most basic translation, etymological translation of the word democracy, which is also a combination of a Greek and Latin word. Then that's the system. That there itself is the system that it's implemented into the constitutional liberal. When you say a constitutional socialist republic, what I'm listening as a Latin America is, oh boy, an Hugo Chavez, a uniparty system that is even worse than the bipartisan system, that is corrupt to its core. Or
Let's
what's
not
happening?
assume that it's so. Let's not assume that. Like I
No,
don't think
I'm saying it from my perspective of what I could understand.
I hear you. I do hear you. Yeah. I guess something I brought up, Leo, earlier, which I do think is a problem with the republic model, is that I think that there's the problem, and it even exists in our country, that the representatives are more responsible along party lines than they are to the people. And the way that I sort of framed that was that when you're a representative and you're a political representative, you're trying to get elected, you won't even get to the election if the party doesn't support you. You need that support from the party more than you need it from the people. So I think that lends itself to people. The representatives care more about what the party thinks than they do about what the people think.
And their own
I mean,
interests.
I think that's true, but I don't think that's intrinsic to the system. Also,
But-
I like halfway agree with the idea that they need the party more than they need the people. And the reason I say I half agree is because the party itself naturally holds a lot of institutional power, such that it can, sway certain results and things like that, and move things to benefit any particular candidate over another. But
Right.
that ultimately it's the people that cast the vote. So I do like I said, half agree with that. I think candidates do depend on both, but I recognize that in a system with parties can hold much institutional power and be able to influence those elections that then depend on the people.
if that corruption of the representative is like not inherent in the structure of republic, then what can't you get rid of that in a capitalist republic?
Well, I don't know what a capitalist republic would be.
We are a republic. The
I
USA.
mean, yes, we're a constitutional federal republic, but I don't
Yeah.
think that the United States, really, in terms of the way that the systems are structured and who they benefit, I don't think that we operate that constitutionally, that federally, or that republicly.
If I may, I want to give an example real quickly. Mark, I put something on to share screen.
Okay, yeah, I was about to ask what that was.
Okay, so this is the Constitution of Costa Rica. I'm bringing up Article 105. Yes, I could do a whole constitutional analysis of over 35 constitutions here in the Western Hemisphere. But this point here, this is the Constitution that has been effective since 49 in Costa Rica. This is the Constitution that currently is our second republic. The power to legislate resides in the people, who delegate it to the Legislative Assembly through suffrage. Such power may not be renounced or be subjected to limitations through any agreement or contract, directly or indirectly, except for the treaties, accordingly to the principles of international law. The people may also exercise this power through the referendum to approve or to abrogate laws and partial reforms of constitution when convoked by at least 5% of the citizens inscribed in the electoral roll. The Legislative Assembly, through the approval of 2/3 part of the total of its member, or the executive power jointly with the absolute majority of the totality of the members of the Legislative Assembly. The referendum will not proceed if the bills are relative to budget, tax, fiscal, monetary, credit, pension, security matters, or matters of approval of loans and contracts or acts of administrative nature. Now, with this example, and I could bring many other examples of the functionability of democracies throughout Latin America. North Americans and Anglo Americans have the worst possible form of definition of constitutional, republic, federal, etc. in many ways. I'm sorry to say it, but they do. In what way? In the way that they do not understand that the experimentation that we have done so since the last 200 to 248 years has been more and more redefined in systems like mine that have Greco-Roman normative principles and not having to deal with some problematics of the common law system, which is not. Common law is not common. It's only practiced in 25 countries in the world at most. And all of them were under British rule at some moment. The interesting part of this is that the problem, and with this I will conclude, the problem of electing people is that even if you have the greatest intention, if you don't have political maturity and political understanding of how to work around things, then you will be subjected to the pressures of power. And when you're subjected to those pressure of powers, majority of them fold. Or if they do not fold, they already had come into power with the interest of self-benefit. And that is a problem that is also highly attached to freedom. Because if we talk about corruption, corruption comes from the most basis of everything, the individual, the private individual. And then
well, you're basically just outlining that there's corruption in politics. I mean, it's like saying water is wet. I mean, it's sort of something that has to be dealt with as we go along. It has to be, because power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Like there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, but I'm arguing from the sense that it's people, it's individuals who learn corruption and who decide over corruption. For corruption to happen, you need a corruptor. and those corruptors in our reality have been mainly of the private industry or the private corporation that then get involved themselves into the public sense to win a contract or to receive
make
benefit
money.
they shouldn't
To make money. They do it to make fucking money. That's why they do it. That's why Boeing killed 2 people who tried to give out dispositions against them. That's why they've been building their planes more cheaply, because they want more money.
But does the problem lie more in that those corporations are able to use positions that have such power? Is the problem in the fact that there are positions that have so much control over regulations, economy?
Yeah, but why do we regulate? Why does the government regulate the economy?
The government, what do you mean? But why does it regulate the
Why are
economy?
there
It's
labor
because-
laws?
Well, it's just 1 second. So it's because that unregulated, that corporations will do things that are against the interests
Exactly.
of the people.
The
yeah,
regulation
I mean,
is
I'm not
the
sure.
regulation.
Lots of things that are bad.
The point that I want to make is the regulation is not something that occurs in spite of the private sector. It occurs in virtue of the private sector. The regulations are a way of combating the power that those with control over the private sector have.
But it also, regulations also limit the government itself.
Sure.
Yes.
There's lots of regulations for lots of things. It's not all.
Oh yeah,
So-
but
Private
I think
businesses have
we've
regulations.
seen the problems with unregulated business before.
Right.
Like when you have unregulated business, bad things start to happen because unfortunately corporations they have a responsibility to maximize their profit. They have a legal responsibility to do that because they have shareholders, and none of this is disputed.
Owners.
So we
no,
have to
just-
regulate, because if we just allow them to take actions that will maximize profit, you've got a sort of a flaw there where maximizing profit usually comes at the expense of people's well-being.
Well, there is an irony there, though, which is that those
Yeah.
corporations always end up coming back and buying that power and legislating in their
Oh, yeah.
favor anyway.
So
Or
Yeah,
at
no, I
least
totally
trying.
agree.
Yeah.
What's interesting
and
on
that's
this?
the problem with the system is because the way that the thing that people need to understand, and this is a fundamental thing I don't think most people understand. I think people think the government's more powerful than the capitalists are.
I
No, they're
understand.
fucking not. The capitalists have more power than governments because they own the economy, the means of production. That
I think it's a partnership.
is a much more important system than our government systems. So
Then why are they trying to buy it
That-
off? Isn't it a useful tool?
who's
for
trying to
them?
buy what off?
The corporations are trying to buy off the politicians, or
Yes, because they're a
laws.
threat to the power that the capitalists have. So the capitalists use the capital that they own to influence the operation of our
I
state
don't-
institutions to operate in their interest.
It seems like
I
it's their
don't
best
think-
friend.
I don't think they have like absolute power, Leo. I
I'm
don't
not
think
saying
that
I never said
they-
absolute power. I said they have
Well, you
more.
said that
the
they
capitalist
control the
class.
economy.
They do. The capitalist class doesn't just control the economy; they own it. That's what capitalism is: private ownership over the means of production. You are a capitalist if you own production, like the
Based.
Koch brothers are capitalists. The Cargill Macmillan family are capitalists. The Walton family are capitalists. They own whole ass society-wide means of production. And I
So-
just think that those should be more democratically owned and controlled personally.
Well, yeah, I agree. I
And
completely
Leo, I wanted to quickly reply. Why are there regulations? And you gave the example of labor because there was exploitation. There's no doubt that there's sufficient
Of course.
evidence in history that,
Capitalism
At the-
depends on it.
yeah, we can agree on that. Now, I'm going to give you an example of my own country. We had the ICE, Instituto Costarricense de Electricidad, which is a national hold, the electrical grid. It's national. It's nationalized. but also telecommunications was nationalized. We fought back 24 years ago against a project that was called the Convolisi, which was a starting point to privatize telecommunications. Now, my reasons to fight against that was because I read the project and I knew that there was going to be hell of corruption. But we lost. We won stopping that project, but we lost because at the end, the opening of telecommunications happened. But it was interesting because you saw the public telecommunications, the ones that gave phone service here, compete with the private ones. And at the end, that benefited us in obtaining better technology and better drive as to not only the public, etc. Yes, there's still issues on the service, and there's still issues on that.
Could you sort of filter down to the point that you're making?
The point being here is that I partially agree with the idea of Leo, but within the experience that we've done in my countries, is that a mixed system is better than just a fixed system of either completely private or completely public.
I don't believe that you can mix capitalism and socialism specifically. At least I also don't believe in fixed.
Well,
I don't think you can, because I don't think you can, because they fundamentally mean different things. Socialism means something different. You can't have both private and democratic control of the economy at the same time. You can't do that. That's two different things.
Well, yeah, you can. You can have publicly, government-owned corporations running in the capitalist system.
Yeah, they're running in a market. They're running in a market system, but a market system and capitalism, which merely uses a market system, are not the same thing.
Okay, but that's not like that. That government-owned corporation is not a capitalist system. Because
it's not a socialist system either. Person. That would be statism.
Well, no, I never said it was, but it's still government-owned, for instance.
Yeah, that's statism, not socialism.
Correct. Okay, so, but we can agree that that is something that we can do. Like, I think that we
mix statism and capitalism?
Nothing is real socialism, right?
Just one second, Leo, because I wanted to point something out about what you said earlier, and that was that, you know, these people, they own sort of all of the, you know, for instance, you're talking like monopolies, like the Koch brothers own the entire widespread monopoly on this sort of section.
Not monopolies necessarily, no.
Well, all I'm saying is that there's no particular reason why the government can't regulate for that not to happen, except that they lack the political will.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
There's no reason that, like you sort of said, that individuals or families or these capitalists hold wide swaths of the entire means of production. There's no reason why the government cannot prevent that from happening, except they lack political will.
Yeah, absolutely. They lack political will because the capitalists are saying, hey, if you protect the systems and the status quo that makes us extraordinarily wealthy through our privatized ownership of the means of production and the exploitation of the workers employed therein, we will make you super rich too, and then we can all be buddies and the system will be maintained and it'll be the best ever. And that's what's happening. That's why, at least here in the US, Citizens United was passed in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Welcome, Grayson. Are you back at Dinosaur Adventureland?
No. Can you hear me okay?
You had to go back for seconds. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Well, I wasn't sure how the connection was going to be out here. I'm kind of like out there, you know?
All up in nature.
Beautiful,
but, yeah,
though.
interesting. Yeah, I'm in Colorado. So I think, Snake, aren't you in Colorado too? Nice, yes. So,
but I'm indoors where humans live.
I know that I've spoken with Snake before about politics, and he knows, and I think Leo knows too. I'm pretty anti-Trump. I'm going to be casting my vote in 2024 for Biden, even though I don't 100% agree with him.
Biden.
What was that, Leo?
I'm just like, over here, like, Biden. but let's go, Joe. Let's go, Joe.
I mean, CHIPS and Science Act was really, really great for funding science. You had the Infrastructure Reduction Act for like some of the most progressive climate change policy that a U.S. president has ever done. He's been a pretty pro-union president. I really hate his approach to Gaza and some of his foreign policy stuff. But with Ukraine, he's been better. So it's a mixed bag. But still, overall, when you compare the two, it's not even close. I mean, come on.
Yeah, should we
let's
vote for
face it, his son is dodgy as fuck, basically. His son is really dodgy.
Hunter?
But that... Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean that I should judge him by his offspring, kind of. You know what I mean? Like, why are we going, well, your son... Like, we can have the best, a really good person. Their son runs off the rails, does a lot of horrible stuff. It doesn't mean that person's a bad person. It just means that their son has done wrong things. Like, I just don't get...
One would have to ask, when are the sins of the sons the responsibility of the father, and when are the sins of the father the responsibility of the son?
Well, this is what I was going to get
Bible.
to. Well, this is what I was going to get to. He has also done a lot of nepotism for his son. His son just wholesale admitted that he would not be in the positions that he is in without Biden putting him there. Basically, that
Trump is the same thing. He literally made his son his.
No, I get it, and there's a big
Yeah.
difference between putting your son in a position of power and outright breaking a crime and being convicted for. Like, there's a big difference between those two, and sort of knowingly falsifying business records. There's a huge difference between the two. Issa, welcome, but I do agree with you. It's just. Yeah, it's not like Biden is perfect.
No, absolutely not. He's horrible. He's just not a fascist. And that's the thing. You can either vote for the obvious, outright fucking fascist who's pretty much said, yeah, I'll be a fascist and it'll be great. Or you can vote for the guy who's your typical neoliberal corporatist. I've made my decision and it wasn't very hard.
Leo, no, he's a
fascist?
He's a perfectly preserved mummy.
Is Trump a fascist?
Sorry.
That's a question,
Yes.
because I don't think.
Brother, you're not going to vote for
I think
Frederick
he is.
Douglass? You're not going to vote for Frederick Douglass?
So what are the hallmarks of fascism, Leo?
I would say that the hallmarks of fascism are nationalism, ultranationalism, militarism.
Ultranationalism, yeah.
Yes, authoritarianism or totalitarianism, the enforcement of traditionalist values and puritanical values through the strict regimentation of society. These are the things that characterize fascism.
Do you
and I think that Trump
cares?
and the Republican Party broadly, and I'll finish with this, broadly encapsulate what fascism is understood as.
I agree with you on some of the more extreme people in the Republican Party. Totally agree, right? The issue that I have with Trump is that I don't think he cares about America. I don't think he cares. Well,
neither do
but nationalism is the ultra promotion of your own country above all others.
Trump drums up nationalism. That doesn't mean that Trump.
No.
Well, I would consider Trump a nationalist, but I don't think Trump actually gives a fuck.
He drums up nationalism. No, you don't get two screens, Issa. As much as you try, you don't. I'm sorry. As much as he drums it up, I don't think he actually believes it. I think he is a totalitarian dictator, but he's not like a fascist like Hitler wanted to make the country this great and powerful thing. I don't think he cares.
So
I think fascism can be embodied in a multitude of different means. I think Mussolini, who was also a fascist, was still quite different from Hitler. And I think that Donald Trump as a fascist is different from both, because I think that the ways through which fascism manifests today, 80, 90 years later from the 1930s, are going to be a bit different as a result of various social, cultural, and technological advances. It's still fascism, and we can still recognize it as fascism, but it might manifest in slightly different ways and spread in slightly different ways because of the changes that our society has undergone since that time period. And so I still think that it's...
Well, let me respond
I
to that
still
for
think
1
Trump
second.
is a fascist.
Well, let me respond to that for 1 second. And I would absolutely agree about a totalitarian dictator, but it's just all the things that fascists are supposed to embody. The nationalism. I don't think he is a nationalist. I think he's just playing on that to get people's support.
I still
Religious
consider that a
support.
fascist.
Nationalism is fascist?
So
Just
give me
on
a
its
moment there.
On
just
its own? No, not on its own.
No, not at
Hold
all.
on.
But it's extreme nationalism.
If I may just quickly intervene in that. Leo, I don't know if you're going to like this or not, but for us in Latin America, whoever reaches presidency is pretty much the same to us. Yes, virtually many of us prefer technically Biden, but not because, oh, Biden, blah, 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 blah. For us, Republicans and Democrats are a piece of shit in every sense of the word for the past 74 years. In Latin America, both of them have been bad to us in every sense of the word.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sometimes there have been Democrats, and the one most recent one in memory, John F. Kennedy, that had just a tiny little bit better relationship with us. However, Trump is what, like I said in the beginning, is to United States what Hugo Chavez was to Venezuela, or what Daniel Ortega is to Nicaragua, or what Milei today is to Argentina, what Bukele, etc. The authoritarian populist dictator wannabe. If you want to put the label of fascist, yes, but fascism as itself behaves, and I agree with you, behaves depending on who is the fascist in power, and has
That's what I said.
denotations, etc. And I agree with you on that point. And nationalism is one of those tenets, and I do agree with you, one of those historical tenets of how fascism grew. The over-nationalism based on xenophobic and racist and ethnical prejudice principles enables that so-called nationalism. But what's interesting is Trump is wants to return economy to an isolationist, protectionist way that United States was prior to World War One.
Yeah, and he's a nationalist. I mean, his
Adding to
motto
that.
is literally America first.
When America's not.
Well,
one
I
country.
don't. Yeah, no, I wonder if he believes that or whether he believes.
But I don't think that Trump has to personally believe it for him to be a fascist. The fact that he uses it for the sake of political power and control, I think indicates that he's a fascist. I don't necessarily think Hitler believed everything that he said. I think that he didn't like the Jews.
Just one question, Leo. Do you consider someone who is sort of prima facie fascist a fascist, like in reality?
Yeah.
Okay.
You come off as fascist to me, I consider you a fascist.
Okay.
And I think that Trump represents the nationalism, the authoritarianism, the racism, the regimentation of society. All of these things, I think, are represented in Trump and his policies and in the Republican Party broadly. And I think that if given the opportunity, if they had power over the federal government, they would implement literally fascist policies. They would target gay people and trans people, and they'd probably just start mowing immigrants down at the border. Like, let's be honest, they've already expressed an interest in harming these people by putting up things like saw blades and razor wire. They're okay with these people getting hurt. That's what that means. That's what fascists do.
They separated families, and that is
That's
a crime.
what fascists do. And they do it in ways that target specific racial or ethnic demographics. And that's exactly what the Republican Party did.
But
just to give you a quick perspective, I've worked migration. Have you ever taken the body of a 10-year-old kid of your own people out of the river?
Nope.
I have.
Can't imagine what it's like.
I have, and not just one body. I had to take out 5 bodies of the ages between 10 to 15 years old. 3 of them were Mexican, 1 was from Honduras, and the other one was from Venezuela. I know, because I have lived it, because I've been there, because I've had to shed tears, blood, and sweat to fix the issues that are happening here.
Because the major U.S. party killed people. It said to the
Both.
world, we're okay.
Both parties.
Yes.
With
Isn't
killing
it?
people.
Parties. Both
Hasn't
parties.
this policy been going on for a long time? Obama
No,
did the
the
same
razor
thing. Maybe not
wire
to the
and the
same
saw blades were
scale.
specifically implemented by the Republican government of Texas.
Okay, but separating families,
Was
there were
started by the Trump administration. Yes,
that was happening under Obama,
under his yeah, not nearly at the same rates.
but it was happening.
Sure, but not
So
nearly.
I mean, I don't.
Obama like was separating families, but not like Trump was separating.
Both
I don't
parties
mean
are
to- not even
responsible
really
for
close.
this, but
But Obama,
note
I mean,
that-
Obama was still a neoliberal corporatist, so I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna
the point
say
I'm trying to.
both parties are
Sorry, go ahead.
responsible for this. Sorry.
Yeah, the point I was trying to get to is kind of what you just said. I kind of feel like we're already in a fascist or pseudo-fascist system because we have this close marriage of the political system with corporation, and to me,
That's
that's
not
the
really what
definition of
defines
fascism.
fascism.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
well,
the technical
just
definition. There's the
That's not
aesthetic
the technical
definition, which is
definition.
jackboots and being mean and forceful.
The
but
main
that is-
definition
that
is
is
going to be things like nationalism, authoritarianism, racism, and strong regimentation of society. Now, oftentimes, a protection
That's
of
not the
corporate
political
power does
definition.
come along with fascism. I will agree with that, but that's not like the defining characteristic. I would characterize America more as sort of a corporatist state.
like so
oligarchy.
the fascist economy is corporation managed by the state and vice versa. Like
That's
they're the same
statism.
thing.
If the
What?
state runs and controls the economy, that's statism.
Well, any state is statism.
No. Statism is
No.
specifically where the centralized state has centralized control over the economy and economic affairs.
There's
is
a lot of
statism.
forms of that, yeah, and fascism is one.
Well, fascism
We don't.
can
I mean,
be
I guess this
statist, yes.
but it also doesn't, like, for instance, a fascist state can actually allow the corporations large degrees of freedom as long as they're working in the benefit of the state. It doesn't have
Right.
direct
Like
control
Hitler
over-
did, yes.
Yep.
Correct. Yeah. So it can do that, and it's not statist, but it is fascist. So it's not an intrinsic thing of a fascist dictatorship. Is statism. I just
The
in listening
Nazis
to
system
Issa-
wasn't statist.
no, I got to welcome Issa because he's been
Okay.
incredibly patient.
You're
Sorry, Issa. Do you have anything to add? Jump in and tell me I'm wrong. Everyone else has been. You're on mute, mate. Nobody can hear you. I switched you over to your computer.
All right, great. That was my question. Thank you. Perfect.
Okay.
I was like holding my phone and I didn't realize it switched.
I'm on the ball today, mate. I know it's surprising to everybody, including myself, but I'm
appreciate you.
actually on the ball.
I appreciate you so much. I think that most of these governments have right-wing figures. I'm thinking of Turkey. I don't know if you folks know about what happened in Turkey with Hizmet and which is Fethullah Gulen or Hoca Efendi and Erdogan, where there's this basic purge of all these almost like, I don't know if it's half of the Turkish population, but a great amount of the Turkish population can't even go back to Turkey because of this President Erdogan, who's been in power for about 20 years,
And weakened the country's constitution, I believe.
Exactly.
Like literally making it so it's like Erdogan
I
gets
know-
to be dictator.
Back in the day, my mother visited Turkey, and it's a gorgeous place with gorgeous people as well, just lovely people. And Erdogan has destroyed that country.
It's going to be funny to tell you this, Mark, even though we had a debate, but I actually agree with you. I think countries should be secular. Personally, I actually agree with you 100%. I think,
Yeah, I know.
I do 100% agree with that. I think we should have religious freedoms, but I don't think any religion should be running any country, like, at all. Like, I think that is a problem. And when we see religions, and that's the problem. That's the problem. We're seeing religious fundamentalism at a rise, and it's really scary, and it's terrifying. And even though the former President Trump was not really religious, he was panhandling, like he's what do they call that? He's being performative.
Pandering.
religion. He's pandering. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. He's pandering to religion. He doesn't really believe in it. His religion is about himself. He's worshiping himself.
Have you heard his answers to the questions when people ask, like, how do you pray? And he's like, oh, well, prayer is great. I love prayer. Everybody prays, We've all got our own ways of praying, and it's really wonderful and beautiful. And I pray too, and, because everybody prays, and it's just great. It's like, what the fuck did you just say, dude?
I feel you. And it's just, to me, it's insane, and we need freedom from this. And it's like, I think it's terrifying. I think this movement to we're talking about fascism, this one wing government that we think of 1984. That's like the epitome of fascism, that this big brother controls everything, controls the news, controls all facets of life. That's a terrifying idea to me. And I think this movement to right wing governments all over the world is insane and crazy to me, and it's dangerous. So that's kind of where I stand.
But if you listen to what they're complaining about, they think that they're standing up against Big Brother and absolute control
but they're not,
of
though,
thoughts in
objectively.
society.
Like, you can't claim that you're standing up to Big Brother when you want to use the state and federal government to prevent trans people from transitioning and gay people from getting married and women from getting abortions and immigrants from coming into your country. Like, you can't sit there and be like, yeah, I'm against all this big government evil. Yeah, Big Brother. I'm fighting against them, but I want to use them to, target everybody I don't like and effectively socially oppress them.
Yeah, there's a lot of hypocrisy.
That's what the right wing is like, at least in America.
Like, everyone hates big government until they have control of the government, then they love big government.
But
everyone hates Big Brother until they have control of the government, and they want a tap into everyone's phones until they find.
I don't think that's necessarily true of everyone. I do think, however, that it's become and sort of at this point, I've got to sort of say the problem is Rupert Murdoch and his portrayal of the way that what they say, because they'll just lie outright, and for some reason people just like and sort of there's lies and then there's lies, and I get all politicians lie, but some of those are not on equal footing. Like, for instance, Trump saying that he would come up with a replacement for the Affordable Care Act and not producing a single damn thing while trying to, he said he would have a superior
repeal and replace.
Repeal and replace, and he said he'd have a better system by that Christmas, and that rolled around. It's literally been like 6 years later, or 7 years later, and he still hasn't produced a single even paragraph of a bill to replace the Affordable Care Act. And he's tried to repeal it, and the Republicans... No, you may not, I haven't finished. The Republicans have on multiple occasions tried to repeal it with nothing to replace it, but he keeps saying he's got something better when clearly he's lying. Why do people believe it?
Religious fundamentalism, usually. Not always, but usually. I think.
I agree, and there's tribalism too. Like, people say, and I agree with...
great point.
What's said before, that we have this tribalistic narrative where people are like, this is my team, so I'm going to support my team no matter what. And we see this both with Democrats and Republicans. Like, a lot of my family, they're primarily like liberal Democrats. And I was talking about the crime bill from Bill Clinton from, the 90s. And my aunt was like, no, this is not, Bill Clinton didn't do this. But I'm like, but he did. Like, Democrats are equally culpable in this. And that's the problem. We play this game where we support this team because someone's a little closer to us ideologically speaking, instead of holding everyone accountable.
And that's the problem at the higher political level of actual politicians. Because notice all the Republicans that both in 2016 and in 2020 and fucking now complained about Trump and talked bad about Trump, but who the fuck did they endorse and who did they support and who did they vote for when push came to shove?
Ted Cruz,
that's what I mean.
Chris Christie, they all said that Trump is a liar, and
Lindsey
they
Graham.
all said, all of them.
Oh, don't even get me started. I'm sorry.
You know what? The only one to stick to his guns was what's his name? The Mormon guy. Oh God, I had his name.
Mitt Romney.
Mitt Romney. All the way through, he's been consistent, and I like
Mitt Romney. I really do. He strikes me as a politician who's like, he's got his views, but he's willing to work with
Right.
people to try to like actually get something done, you know. And
I
you just
mean-
don't see that in politicians. Who was it that I think it was Mark that mentioned this earlier. It's all about the party and the party line.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but like,
mentioned-
do you remember the race between Obama and Hillary Clinton? Like, she was smearing him all the time, and then as soon as he won,
Yeah.
she turns around.
Yeah.
I did mention something
It's
before.
just a political thing. Like, I don't.
Yeah,
see-
yeah.
it seems like
what
you're
it is.
like you're almost saying that there's one side that is just evil. They're just monsters.
There is. Yeah.
So
Yeah, there is.
If
So
I
the best
may-
way to put it
I think
is
it's more
that
subtle
the
than that.
Republican Party wants to take the ball and roll it all the way the fuck backwards. The Democrats don't want to move it forward, despite their claims that they do, but leaving it where it is, just not moving at all, is infinitely better than rolling it all the way back. That's
So-
the difference between the Republican and the Democratic parties.
Okay.
damn,
let's do
I'm
so-
having such a hard time trying to get into
got-
the moments of silence. I apologize if I've interrupted anyone. I'm trying to measure the moments of silence where I may be able to intervene. But I did mention something in the prior intervention. I said North Americans, or gringos as we call them here, that gringo mentality is in many ways immature. From the conversation of fascism, in fact, I had a screenshot because I wanted to talk about fascism in the pure sense of the word of it, to this notion. But look, I've lived through this exact same problem in Venezuela. The death of the bipartisan model of the ADECOS and the COPEI, which could be translated to Republicans and Democrats, and the origin of Hugo Chavez. And I also lived it in Costa Rica. 14 years ago, we broke our bipartisan system of the Partido de Liberación Nacional and the Partido de Unidad Social Cristiana, or the National Liberation Party and the Social Christian Unity Party that were governing us for 60 years. I can tell you that the problem of immaturity of the United States has to do mainly with a lack of political
Capitalism.
education.
That too,
Not
yes.
not just capitalism, but I'm going.
I agree with you completely.
And that lack of political education also is attached to heavy problems of of language. English is not precisely the best language to understand the origins of words like fascist that have Latin origins. For us in Spanish, it's much more easier to go to the etymological sense of that word and understand why, and then the parameters of fascist in Europe, etc. With this, not to extend myself, and I apologize, I know I talk a lot. With this, what I wanted to poise on the table.
Can you wrap it up for us?
Yeah.
What you're actually pointing? Because you
Yeah,
basically
I was just about to wrap it up. Sorry.
said that etymology means we don't understand fashion. I think we've got a pretty good handle on what it actually is, especially political scientists.
What I wanted to really, I'm sorry, I'm trying to translate my ideas from Spanish to English, and that's why I speak very slow sometimes. I apologize on that. What I want to drive home is that the culture of the United States politically, between exceptionalism, imperialism, interventionism, have blinded the United States citizen to go beyond its incapability of breaking that bipartisan model. But I am hopeful that in the near future we're going to see that breakage. But I am also worried that that breakage would mean a dictator in the United States.
Well, I'm not sure about that one. I think that it's sort of saying it's impossible to break the bipartisan sort of two-party system. I don't think that's true, but it definitely requires more political will that currently is there. But I do have to agree with Leo 100% that if you're looking towards leaning towards fascist policies and fascist things and staying where we are, which is not the best system, staying where we are is the way to go. It's kind of sort of saying, well, if we're choosing between Bismarck and Hitler, which one would you choose?
Exactly.
Bismarck every fucking time. There's no question about that.
The thing for me. Oh, I'm sorry.
No. 1 second. Just Big Band Mama had a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Big Band Mama. Any support of Trump after the 1st of the 6/21? I believe that's the insurrection is reprehensible. Yep. Yeah, it does, and there is a pending criminal trial for that. Let's not forget that as well for the insurrection. And anybody that cannot condemn the people that basically invaded and wrecked the Capitol building, I don't know why you would vote for that person. When they go and try and take zip ties into a Capitol building to literally kidnap members of the parliament, I don't know how you would say that those people are heroes, which he actually has said.
I just wanted to say quick about the whole voting thing. One of the biggest reasons, and this is more going out to like my leftist Americans who talk about, I'm not voting at all because the reason that I'm voting for Biden, despite the fact that, and I think it is too, I think it's very dangerous. Despite the fact that I don't like Biden, I don't like Biden. I don't. I do think he's done some decent stuff as president. But I don't like him. I think his foreign policy, the fact that he's full on, stamping a fucking wanton genocide of an entire group of people is just so unfucking fathomable to me. But anyway, I'm still going to vote for him because primarily I care about immigrants. I care about trans people. I care about gay people. I care about all the people that the Republican Party has openly and unequivocally made clear that they will target if they have the power to do so. That's horrible. I don't give a fuck if you think that people shouldn't be getting abortions. You shouldn't be voting for a party like that. It's disgusting. And that's why I'm voting for the Democrats, because they are an objectively better, which is something you'll almost never hear me say, party than the Republican Party. They just are. And that's not to say the Democrats are a good party. What this really is a testament to how fucking horrible the Republican Party is, because they're borderline fascist. Yeah, has become. Yeah. They're borderline fascists.
It seems to be all of the old people that were statesmen have just they're gone. They've just been forced out, which is horrific.
So I agree with most of that. And I'm not team right at all. But it's what I'm seeing is like, so why is it getting worse on the right? Because it seems to me like the demonization of the right. Well, I got 2 points. I'll try and cover it really quickly. The demonization of the right kind of allows the left to be lazy and complacent in that, and just impotent in that all they have to do is nothing good. They just have to be not Republicans, and they can just get elected on that basis.
Valid point.
And while it's true, like, yeah, vote for the lesser of two evils, but there's the situation where the lesser of two evils doesn't ever have to improve, and that is a problem in and of itself.
Yes, it is.
The other thing,
yes.
Okay, so we're in agreement there.
Snake, but here's the thing: like Hillary ran on that and lost, and we saw what happened, right?
But which would the Democrats have won if there was someone a little more likable than Hillary Clinton, like that's
Yeah, Bernie Sanders would have
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
smashed Trump.
I agree.
Every
I am
fucking
so
poll
I am
said it.
one
Even
of the reasons I'm
Rasmussen.
very mad at the Democrat Party is because of what they did to Bernie Sanders. It's
Yeah,
very
it's
corrupt.
horrible. Fucking liberal fucks.
But this is the part I think you'll disagree with, is that what I see is the radicalization on the right is being driven by some radicalization on the left, in which they're seeing this weird mutant left and they're doubling down and saying, we got to go back to Jesus now. It's like they've gone too far, and now everyone's reacting and snapping way back to before. Like our society was slowly getting better on LGBT stuff, and
Excuse me.
now they're
What do
snapping
you-
back.
What do you
Worse
mean by
than
a
they were
weird
before.
mutant left? What do you mean by weird mutant? I don't understand what you mean
The
by
woke,
that. Maybe.
woke.
Oh, okay.
And
I don't-
which is the same thing basically.
Can I make a point
So,
quick? Because sorry.
Yeah, go, Leo. No, go.
So I don't think that Snake is necessarily wrong with what he's saying, though I might disagree a bit with the way that he's framing it. I don't think the left is just moving further to the left in a vacuum. What I think is happening is that society is becoming more educated, society is becoming more tolerant, and society is becoming more open as we continue to advance into the future. And these
Well-
traditionalists and these puritanicals, as a
Well,
result
can I
of
butt in real
that,
quick?
are moving further right.
Can I butt in real quick?
Yes.
Agreement on that point. I think that the far swing to the left is a response to the puritanical right wing, like, oh, you can't have bad words in rap music of the 80s, 90s kind of era. I think
Honestly, yeah, I agree
this
with
is
you.
a problem of the
I
human
think
condition.
it's almost
We swing on the
dynamical.
pendulum.
Yeah, I think it's
Leo-
almost dynamical. Both moving into extremes is feeding both moving into extremes.
Leo,
So-
have you ever talked to a Latin American how Latin America views, or the left in Latin America views the left of the United States?
No.
It's gonna impact you. We consider the left of the United States to be extremely childish and not even near the potential or the capacity of leftists movement that have happened in Latin America. We consider them to be
I would agree.
not even close to leftist. I mean, here in Latin America, we've had from Fidel Castro to the examples of Salvador Allende to the recent election of Boric, Lula da Silva, Dilma Rousseff, so on and so on. I could mention so many. But the idea, I'm just going to say it out loud. The major problem.
Well, I don't think that's just of Latin America. I mean, in Australia we have two parties, and our Conservative Party resembles America's sort of Liberal Party. It's
Isn't it
sort
called
of,
the Liberal Party, Mark?
Correct. Yes, it is the Liberal Party. Yes, but the Labor Party is more like, has a lot of ties to unions and things like that.
Mhm.
And here, conservatism sees the United States conservatives as BS, that they are not conservative, that they're not fully Christian or Catholic or etc. I mean, look, my country, in our Constitution, Article 75 establishes that the official religion of my state, Costa Rica, is the Apostolic Roman. And part of our yearly budget goes to the Catholic Church. So my taxes go to pay the Catholic Church. I know what it is to live under an extreme conservative country to such a degree that for 13 years I fought for the legalization of cannabis in Costa Rica and through the Congress. I had to fight against the Christians and the Catholics that did not want cannabis legalized. I kicked their asses and I was able to get cannabis legalized in Costa Rica. And I've worked in different Congresses in Latin America. The conservatives of the United States are assholes and mostly idiots. But the conservatives in Latin America, they're as equally as murderers as those extreme left that have happened to us here. So sometimes it feels like we don't give a damn about conservatives of leftism. And in fact, much of the leftism, and look at what happened with Daniel Ortega. Daniel Ortega said the revolution in Sandinista is communist and it's Christian. Many of the movements in leftism in Latin America have become extremely conservative.
Yeah, I get all of that. It's like I think that religious differences might be one of the reasons why, like, because Catholicism is huge in Latin America, and it's not in America. It's evangelical that is actually the largest sort of subcategory of Christians over there. But that's something altogether entirely different. I've found that most Catholics in my country are less conservative than the evangelicals, which is strange because the Catholic Church is an older and much more established organization.
Yeah.
Well,
barring the
That also
traditionalists,
means
it's slightly more progressive, I think, within the sphere of Christianity.
And
Again,
just
barring the traditionalists.
And just
Like
FYI, in
Trajan.
Latin America, the Christians are winning more than the Catholics. Evangelicals are becoming even stronger than the Catholic Church. So now we have the evangelicals in Latin America gaining power and deciding in line with the evangelicals of the United States the futures of our countries. Look at what happened in Bolivia after the coup against Evo Morales. What was the first thing that the representative came out with? A Bible showing the Bible is back in the presidency of Bolivia.
I'm sorry. One thing I was thinking that what I see as the through line is this kind of right wing religious fanaticism, and I think that is a really important concern across the world. Even we were talking a little bit about the conflict in the Middle East. I think that that's one of the big problems is this religious fanaticism, that people are so linked to their fanatical ideology. And what bothers me deeply is that there's this master hypocrisy where people are like, you know, I'm going to take on the victimization complex and say, when my folks are suffering, it's, you know, it's so terrible and bad. But if my group goes and oppresses other people, that's fine. And that really bothers me because it reeks of kind of a very disgusting hypocrisy. And it's very problematic, I think. Mark, I wanted to ask you a question. What do you think about Sky News, that conservative news media? What is your opinion on that?
About what, sorry?
Sky News.
Oh yeah, no, they're absolutely terrible. I mean, don't forget that Rupert Murdoch
Are they like
started
Fox?
over here. Oh, they're Australia's version of Fox. They're a lot less popular though.
I get spammed every single day. They're complaining about Meghan Markle did this. Meghan Markle is gonna be the downfall of monarchy.
So
Good.
you've
Monarchy
got to
needs to
understand-
downfall.
I can't get them out of my feed.
What you've got to understand is how Rupert Murdoch operates, and he's been doing this for a long time. And he started in Australia, so we really understand Rupert Murdoch's model and what he does. So there's a reason why Rupert Murdoch holds on to papers, and he will at all costs and try to get as many papers as possible. He has this way of using papers for legitimacy. So what he will do is he will have his segments on his broadcaster. He will reference the papers that he owns and say, hey, this was printed in the paper. But it really is coming from the same source. It's really coming from the same person. And that paper gives legitimacy to like his Fox News or Sky News or whatever. And then he has the pundits talk about it, relying on the paper to provide legitimacy. But the person that put it in the paper in the first place was his people. So it's really just saying, hey, I'm right because I said I'm right. And so, but he will never let go of like print newspapers for this reason. And it seems to be a failing in us that we can't. We think that print newspapers are more reputable than sort of, you know, Fox News or whatever. They're not when they're owned by the same person.
Yeah.
Does anyone use those news aggregator like bias checker things?
I do. I use All Sides. That's the only one I use.
Occasionally,
I have used it in the past, but I don't do regularly, I must admit.
I wanted to quickly address something that Isa said. My heritage is I'm Afro-Indigenous from Costa Rica. And what he said about the religions is something true. And this bothers a lot of people when I say, for us, my heritage, Islam, Christian, Catholics, and Jews, the Abrahamic religions signify weapons of mass destruction because they were utilized as such against my people. So when I speak against religion, I'm not speaking against the freedom of people having to believe whatever they want to believe. What I stand against is Islam, Catholicism, and Christian as political policies applied to the whole nation. Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and those religions, on any religion, is not a political tool to be imposed as policy to all of us. Freedom is freedom as this notion of Catholic as republics, democracies, etc. is secular. It can never ever be attached to any form of religion because if it does so, it allows oppression.
Point of moderation here. Assuming you're not just a dumbass troll, Schlebington Jr., there is no number for you to call.
Come on.
There is at the top of the chat a link posted. You can click that, and then you can come into the room. And if you don't see the link, then refresh your page, and it should be there. This isn't hard.
Is the link
it was
a bunch
really
of
funny
sexist?
because he wanted to know like why we wouldn't let him on your show, Leo. Which is just hilarious to me. I just thought that was funny. I'm like,
Leo's show.
Yeah, I wish my
Leo
channel
can
had,
tweet the show. Look,
2K subs. Shit.
You'll get there, buddy.
No,
Actually,
I'm just
a link to your channel.
poking fun at myself.
Shut up and take my promotion. Like, seriously.
To respond to what you were saying, so I actually went to Costa Rica. I did it as a part of my program. I did a peace and conflict resolution program at a university local to me, and one of our programs was to go to Costa Rica because in Costa Rica they don't have an army. So the big problem is an environmental crisis. So I went to meet the Baruca people, and we kind of stayed at at their center in like a forest. It was really kind of amazing. And I did an interview, and the chief of this community basically was saying that he had to go to law school to kind of defend, because what the electric company wanted to do was to kind of destroy the environment by making a dam, which would destroy biodiversity, would it hurt the community, hurt the animal population, and it was kind of a very powerful situation. So I understand what you're talking about with like imperialism and colonialism, and I can understand how Abrahamic traditions have functioned in that way. And I think that is a problem in a lot of these conversations, as having been a debater on this subject, defending Abrahamic traditions. I noticed that we have to be consistent and honest that there is problems in this situation, and they have done damage and they have done harm. And so I wanted to honor and validate what you were saying. I think that's fair.
Hey, that's awesome that you were here. The Baruca people are cousins of mine. I'm Bribri. I'm more into the Atlantic area. The Baruca is more into the Pacific. To give you a notion for people, Mark, just so people know what we were talking about, if possible, can you share the screen real quickly?
Okay.
So as you can see here, that's my country, Costa Rica, on the north in Nicaragua, South Panama, and the people that he was speaking on is the Boruca, which is pretty much on this area on the South Pacific area, closer to the Panama border. My people look at number 6. My people are number 6, which is more into the Atlantic area. And in fact, this area, Talamanca, the Cordillera Talamanca, is considered a very sacred, very thing in our culture. But yeah, this is my this is where I was born. This is my culture. This is my heritage. I am an American, as somebody born in Alabama or somebody born in Argentina.
Thank you.
Oh fuck.
Did I miss something?
What's so funny? Yeah.
Oh
must
shit,
be-
I'm not muted. Oh fuck, I thought it was... No, it's the Schlebington Jr. guy, and he's just cracking me up.
Yeah. He's a funny guy. I appreciate you, Slevington. Well, I mean, this seems like a really good place to call it. It's reached a bit of a lull, but I really appreciate everybody's point of views here. It's a pity, like Schlevington, you're bothered, but no one's keeping you out, my friend. Nobody is keeping you out. It's not a conspiracy. Please don't believe that. I think that what is important is that everyone goes to vote. I personally would make voting compulsory if I could. I think that as much as it's a pain, I think that it ought to be an obligation to contribute your point of view to your country's future.
Well, it is in
I
your
think
country.
Absolutely.
You're
and I
obligated,
100%
literally obligated to vote, and I
Yes.
love it. They should be that
I
way in
don't know.
America.
No,
If
I think
people-
as a citizen, it's such a minor thing to ask as a citizen, just to be able to
Contribute to
give your
society.
opinion. Right. Just
If
such a
people
minor
don't-
thing.
If people don't feel informed enough to vote, I mean, I don't know why.
They should still be voting, and they should feel informed
should
enough
still
to
vote.
vote. And if they don't, they should inform themselves.
Well, I
Yeah,
think
there's a lot of dumb people out there who just aren't paying
Well,
any attention.
I don't know if I
who
agree with
ju-
that.
Well, I think
Okay,
it's more
that's-
that
That's another
that it's sort of the obligation for you to be a part of a society, and even if you just feel like something will help the country, that's good enough. Like, I think that overall, it shouldn't just rely on a certain percentage. I think it's around 60% of the population on a very good election year for the US. I think that everybody should have a say in where it is. And the problem comes that you have people excluded, like homeless people that can't register for vote because they don't have a permanent home. You know,
People
things
in
like
prison, at least here in the U.S. And
In
yes,
fact-
I
Well-
think prisoners should be allowed. Well, at least here in the U.S., for my country that I live in, I think prisoners should be allowed to vote because they are counted in the population that goes towards determining the number of congressional representatives the states have. And I don't want to see another thing like a 3/5 compromise like we did with black people. If you're counting people in the population counts, they deserve to vote. I don't care that they're a felon and murdered somebody. They still have a right to vote. It's either a right or it's not, but it's not going to sit somewhere in between.
And
That's
what
just
about
me.
the Christian value of redemption? Like, it's so
Yeah,
funny.
no
I thought
shit.
it's a Christian country, and where's the redemption for our people that maybe someone was young and they made mistakes? Isn't there a chance for second chances, or your life is ruined? That's why you have recidivism. So if someone leaves jail, they go right back in because they can't get a job. It's insane. The prison industrial complex is horrible here.
It is. Mark,
My
do you
best
accept
advice-
collect calls?
I will. Well, just from Schlevington, nobody else. Just from Schlevington. That's the only
I'm gonna
person.
see
Like,
it.
I will
Yeah.
because you're obviously very special and need it, Schlevington. You absolutely need help. I'll
He's
accept
definitely
it from you,
trolling
buddy.
after that one.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, totally.
That's hilarious.
But that's my personal opinion. You can disagree. That's fine. I don't. It doesn't make us enemies if you disagree. It doesn't make us against one another. But for my money, and I'll give my opinion, I will go around the room. Well, I'll do that first. Ditso, you were first on. Do you want to do a wrap up? Something?
Yeah,
short,
a quick
so
wrap up.
give your
I
opinion?
agree 100% with what you just said. One of the first steps in democracy to live in freedom is to be also responsible for that freedom. And voting is one of the first steps. But if you are also going to be a person who wants to get more involved, just not voting every 4 years and forget about it. But if you want to get involved, be careful of how you allow yourself to be guided. Do not listen to the charlatans. Study hard. Go into classes about political history, about the history of the conformation of states, etc. Become responsible by informing yourself adequately before getting involved into this whole world. From somebody who has worked politics for past 25 years of his life, one thing is very simple. To change things that need changing in everywhere, the compromise has to be incorruptible.
It's only one way
Robin,
to
I
get
want
to
to welcome you, and I'm so sorry that you didn't have a good connection before. I want to give you some
Damn, she fell
time
again.
to make some points because you. Oh, Robin, I'm so sorry. I really would like to give Robin some time, but Robin's out of
Yeah,
here.
it'd be nice to hear what she has to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so sorry, Robin. I don't know what to do. Maybe we can vote for better connection services for Robin.
No shit, we need it in the US. Fuck. Particularly in rural regions. My lord.
All right, let's try again, Robin. No, she's out of here again. Okay, this isn't working. I'm so sorry, Robin.
StreamYard's rough.
It is. I don't notice StreamYard's been a bit temperamental lately.
Yeah.
Some things that I've been doing has been sort of a little temperamental. Yeah, I'm so sorry, Robin. Are you on your mobile still? Is that maybe the issue? Is it connection issue? Like if it's getting maybe a bit of packet loss and it's dropping the connection? I'm not sure. Anyway, we'll go to Snake. Snake, do you want to wrap up and sort of give your final thoughts and what you think?
Yeah, I think we got into it pretty good. The two-party system, I think, has a stranglehold and is causing a lot of knock-on effects, and one of which obviously is that the tribalism that's going on, it's not even really for the tribe. It's people are gathering to their tribe because they're afraid of the other tribe, and maybe that's always been the point of tribalism. But the fact that we have just this two-party entrenchment is just driving both parties bonkers and worse. And to me, that's a problem, whether you think one is significantly or marginally better than the other one. But really, I mean, I don't know if you can tell. I am not pro-Republic. I am pro-Empire. Okay, so that is the solution to all of our problems. We just need centralized power in one Sith Lord and unlimited power. That's my advice to all of you.
We need
your lack of faith disturbs me.
Yes.
I'm a Skywalker.
There you go.
I'm a trooper.
So your aim is fucking terrible. You never hit anything. If you tried to hit another car,
that's not true. That's not true. The only time that they actually missed anything, they were doing it intentionally to track and follow them. Otherwise, they are depicted as having very good aim.
Nothing has happened here.
Yeah.
We are not the peoples you were looking for. Nothing has happened here.
Stop your anti-empire propaganda, Leo.
Wow. All right.
You know me.
Leo.
On the status quo. What?
Dog bless.